All right. Good evening, everyone. Hope everybody's had a great day. Fearing the weather, the change of the season is amongst us. So I'm praying that everybody's dressing appropriately and they're just having a good day and a good week as we go into this fall season. Fall happens to be my favorite season. That's the best time for me. I guess I think about sweaters, thinking back to like the Cosby Show when thinking about Bill Cosby wearing those sweaters on the Cosby Show and things like that. I still had those type memories as well, and the changing of the leaves that'll be happening probably for the next few weeks. I know that usually happens in October, hmm, early November, somewhere around that time. So I definitely enjoy. Um, this time of year, especially right now when it's not too hot, the humidity is pretty much gone. Yet we still have some pretty nice days. You can get out and be active and things like that. I would then have to say that my second favorite season would have to be spring for pretty much the same reasons. Things are starting to be green and things are starting to flower as well. It hasn't gotten too hot, has been too much humidity building up. So I would say fall, spring are my two favorite seasons, and then going into the summer, I also enjoy that as well. Um, so again, just wanted to invite you in for a nice little conversation. This is Random Thoughts Monday. I have just a few random thoughts Monday. I was actually going to do it last Monday, but I decided to invite some guests who I thoroughly enjoyed, and they talked about colonization. Last Monday is when the Queen passed, so I thought I would talk or have some guests that would come in and talk to us about that have a little bit better understanding of what that's all about. And I do surely appreciate them coming in and doing that. Hey, Mom, happy to see you. Miss you. Talk to you real soon. Thanks for joining. Um, so, uh, so I didn't actually get to random thoughts Monday. So some of my thoughts have I've been carrying over for a couple of weeks now, um, and nothing too deep, nothing too hard, just some random thoughts that I may have had. And as always, I invite you to type in whatever your random thoughts are. Sometimes our random thoughts Mondays turn into Petty Monday or Petty Monday, because sometimes there's some things that we can get pretty petty about, or things that'll actually get on our nerves after a while, and we just need to get it off our chest. So if you have something that you need to get off your chest, feel free to do that as well. Uh, but I just want to share just a few thoughts. Maybe an abbreviated show today. Doesn't like as many of us on today, at least. And that's fine. I know many of us do check in later on during the week, or later on in the evening. So, always still, even though you may not be here with us live, uh, please still leave a comment, still share the conversation, things like that. All right. And I do believe I said it last week. I do appreciate all of you that do come on a regular basis, that are here with me on every Monday. Um, I do truly appreciate this community that you've helped build as well. And I'm looking forward to us continuing on straight on through April. And I think I know what I'm going to do after what April has hit, because that'll be the end of 3 years. Um, and I do believe I've been thinking about it and praying about it and asking God about it. What do we do at the end of the 3 years? Because I never really thought that this was going to be a long term thing. Um, it's not something that I necessarily thought would be, an ongoing thing throughout, the rest of my life. It was something that I wanted to try during a pandemic, and um, I've enjoyed it. I've appreciated it, but by no means am I talking as if this is the last one. So I don't want to make it sound that way. Um, but I do see it evolving into something else going forward as well. All right. So if you have any random thoughts, please share them. If you have any questions, if you have any ideas for the show moving forward, please make sure you include that as well. feel like I'm kind of bright and shiny today. I wasn't able to get the glare off me today, but that's okay. It's going to be all right. Let me just adjust that a little bit. Um, so, a couple of my random thoughts. One, let's make sure that we continue to pray for those. So, we're in the middle of hurricane season, and we've had Hurricane Fiona, and we've had now it's a Hurricane Ian, and it's been doing some pretty bad damage down there um, in the Atlantic here. I know Ian, I think, is supposed to hit sometime either tonight or early tomorrow morning. I haven't looked at the latest on the Florida coast, the western Florida coast. I know Fiona did a horrible job to Jamaica, and I've always found it. I find it amazing, um, that it's been several years now, and I've seen different news reports, but it's been several years now that they still have not been able to get their power grid correct to the point where people are out of power. So I know, like the last thing I heard, half the island was still out of power um, from when Fiona hit earlier or mid last week, and they still out of power, but they never really truly recovered from the previous, you know, and is I just find it interesting, along with the thought that there are those here in the United States, especially those like in Mississippi and Michigan, those populations that tend to have those of us who have brown or darker hues um, are having issues with having water, having clean water. You know, here in Baltimore, we just recently had having problems with my words today, a boil warning or boil alert where for about a week, I guess, there was a certain area of Baltimore City that they had to boil water because there was something going on with the system. And I'm trying to think of what it was. E. coli was found. And so there was a boil alert where we had to boil water. I didn't have to, I wasn't in the area, but there was many who had to do that. I just find it amazing that we had to deal with that kind of stuff in today's age, and that is all it tends to seem to be always in those impoverished areas. You don't think about, or when you hear about these kind of things happening, you don't hear it in those areas that have money, if you will. And I guess that kind of makes sense. They have money to keep up their plumbing, if you will. They're able to do their public works, I guess, because they have the money. But um, I still, for us to be as advanced and supposedly the richest nation in the world, to still have to deal with this kind of stuff just kind of amazes me. Um, so we need to pray for all of those who are suffering or going through those things right now, those who have lost their homes because of these hurricanes, and I think we're like right in the middle of hurricane season. So I'm sure there'll be two, maybe even three more coming our way. And it kind of, and how severe they are kind of speaks to, again, global warming. I know I speak about it every now and then. I believe in global warming, and I think global warming has a lot to do with why we're having these severe weather events. I think it's no coincidence, that the amount of wildfires that we have on the West Coast and the drought. And when you look at the pictures of the drought, my goodness, it's crazy. It looks unreal. It looks like where you can see the former sea levels or the water levels in these different lakes and things like that. It looks like, the deserts. It looks like the Arizona deserts, with very little water. And imagine that's how the Arizona desert was at one point. There was actually water there, you know. So it's like um, I know the Earth goes through its cycles, and I know that things are ever changing, but it just seems like we are contributing to what's happening in the rapid succession of how things are happening when it comes to weather events. I truly believe that we have a lot to do with that when it comes to pollution. And I always go back and I refer to those pictures that we would often see when um, COVID had first started, maybe the second weekend when we were being isolated and we were being told to quarantine and everybody was staying at home. And we would see the pictures of how clear the skies were, how people could see monuments at great distances, and they can see the mountains that they didn't even really recognize how close they were because all that smog had gone away. All the pollution in the air had disappeared just because we had stopped driving for a couple of weeks. Um, it just made our earth look so much cleaner. And I really do think that that helped us a lot. But I would pray that it would inspire us to do better than what we've been doing when it comes to how we're treating this earth and what sources we're using as far as energy is concerned. I pray that we would start doing more wind um, research, and I pray that we would start doing, more things with solar energy and things like that. And I really do believe that would help a lot of things moving forward. And they're always talking about we got to make some drastic changes, or this world that we know today is going to look completely different in less than 30 years now. They used to talk about it was a ways off, but now they're talking about catastrophic changes within 30 years. And when you got into my age, 30 years go by pretty quick. And we're talking about the very next generation, our children and our children's children, our grandchildren. They're going to have to deal with the mess that we've made. And frankly, that's just not fair. That's just not fair. So, with all that being said, and that was just me having a random thought. That wasn't even on my notes. Um, I forgot how I even got to that point where I started with, or we was talking about the hurricanes and things like that. But that's an example of what a random thought is. How it can just go on and on and on. The other thing I wanted to talk about and bring up is to continue to pray for you for the Ukraine. Now, I find it amazing, although we are starting to hear a little bit more and more. I am starting to hear it more on a daily basis, but isn't it amazing that this country, this little country, compared to Russia, is starting to beat back big bag Russia, you know? And Putin is not looking very well. He's not looking very good. And I understand they're holding these elections, but when you look at the pictures and the video of these makeshift elections, you can see that the tallies and all of that, the voting sheets, they're all the same. Handwriting, you can tell it's fake. Now, if there's any fake news, that's fake news. Um, and it kind of makes you wonder, and I'm not going to go on a tangent about your former president, President Trump, but it kind of goes, it makes you kind of understand why he was like, why he felt like there was much to admire about Putin. Okay, and there's much to admire about Kim Sung Young, or what's his name, the dictator in Northern Korea. It's like um, it's like you wonder who was advising him beyond those few that were around him directly. Okay, who was advising him and who planted that idea of you don't have to leave. You know, it just makes you wonder. And now I know that the hearings are gonna starting back up this week. And not that I'm waiting with anticipation, but I am interested in finding out what else is going to be revealed. I know I heard in the news today that someone from within the White House called out to a reporter, or called out during the riot, and they know who they called, but they don't know who called, who it was that made the call, and was that instructions to proceed or what. So I am kind of like interested in trying to figure out and what's going on. But I was saying all that because it's amazing how the Ukraine has been able to fight back uh, the Russian troops, and how many of these Russian troops are just surrendering and giving up. They're just pretty much defecting, and it's causing unrest in Russia. You know, there are riots and things like that. And of course, we don't hear a lot about that, but we know it's happening uh, from the different reports that do actually make it out. And Putin is just kind of looking, he's made himself look weaker with this invasion because um, I think he thought that the Ukraine was just going to roll over, but in fact, they're now fighting back, and you're seeing, you know, the images of the Russian tanks being blown up, and you're seeing, you know, the damage that's being done. I think it was Wednesday or Thursday they had taken back one of those cities that had been under Russian control when they first attacked and things like that. So I think if anything, Putin would have been better off just leaving it alone because he was the big unknown. He looked like the big bad bear, but now it doesn't seem like the bear has much as far as teeth are concerned. He just growls a lot. Although there's still that sense of um, fear, if you will, of how far will he go to save face, and there is still always that nuclear um, threat. You know, whether it be a local attack or a global attack, that's still certainly there. And you just never know where his mentality is or how sane he may be. You know, sometimes people get so drunk with power, they think anything and everything is justifiable. And that could be a real concern. So we have to think about that. So we definitely need to pray about that. That situation is still ongoing. So we need to continue to pray about that as well. All right. Um, but with all that being said, you know, it's starting to ramp up already. We got to think about what's going on our home front as well, and we have to really start thinking about voting. We have to really start thinking about voting and who we're going to start voting for, and really start paying attention to these candidates that are out there. You know, this is the time to start doing it. Even though the voting period is a little ways off, we need to make sure that we are paying attention to what these politicians are saying in both parties. You know, it's not just about the other party, whatever your party may be, but really start to pay attention to what's being said by both parties, by both parties, um, and start doing some research and finding out who is saying what and who do you line up with the most. You know, it's no way you're going to find someone that you're going to agree with 100%. That's not going to happen. Okay, there's no way that's going to happen. Because I've said it before. I doubt there's anybody on this earth that you will ever talk to that you will agree with 100%, 100% of the time. That's just impossible. So it's important that you start to pay attention and start to look at their voting history and start looking at what they stand for and see if those things line up with what you believe and how you feel that this country should be. Okay. Um, and listen to whatever rhetoric they're saying or whatever lies they're putting out there. You need to start paying attention to that now, so that when it's time for us to get in the booth, you're not just going in there and you're just going by what names you remember. I know I've done that before. You know, I kind of remember that name, but at the same time, I don't remember all that they stand for. I think we got to do better. I think that's why we're in so much trouble now, is because we kind of just blindly put people in. Sometimes just because of the party line that they're within. Um, Sometimes, you know, because of how they look. Sometimes because of the name recognition. All right, but we need to really pay attention to what's being said. You know, and I'm one. I don't care more so about the party. I'm more so about who's really going to be in there, who's going to have the best interests of the people Okay, that's what's important to me. I was thinking the other day, and again, just random thoughts. I was thinking the other day that growing up, I looked at the government as our protectors, the protectors of our democracy. I looked at the Supreme Court um, as those who are on the Supreme Court were honorable, and those on the Supreme Court were going to defend the Constitution, and they're going to do what's best for us, the people, we the people. And in recent years, that feeling has gone away, and I'm thinking about Clarence Thomas and things like that, and his wife and things like that. And I don't know all the ins and out about the story about her, calling people and trying to convince people to do this or to do that. Okay, she certainly has a right to voice it, but if he is weighing his judgments not based on the Constitution or justice, period, but because of the way his wife may sway him, that's a real issue for me. That's a real issue for me, and that's the kind of stuff that bothers me, because then that says those things that I learned and those things that I were told to honor and appreciate about this country has been a falsehood. And certainly there these aren't the first time these type things have happened. I'm not saying that until recent times our constitution has been perfect for everyone involved, nor has every branch of the service has been fair, or every branch of the Congress has been fair. I'm not saying that, but I just feel like we've lost some of those American ideals that really help make us the great country that we are supposed to be. I can't even say that we are, but who we are supposed to be. And anytime that you have a senator um, who ships, who ships immigrants to other parts of the country, okay, and uses it for political reasons. I think, I mean, honestly, that should be criminal. You know, I've heard the say on DeSantis, sorry, DeSantis, down in Florida, speak, and he spoke about this whole thing when he flew the immigrants up to what's it called? Y'all know where it's at. Uh, I can't think of the name of it right now, but he flew them to a democratic state, basically. Okay, and he pointed it out. He said, why should the red states or a red state have to bear the burden of these immigrants? Okay, now if he had said, why should my state have to bear the burden of having these immigrants come here? It should be shared by all of us. This burden should be shared by all of us. I would have been fine with that. But as soon as he said, this red state, okay, and then he purposely sent them to a Democratic or blue state, that's politics, And I understand Florida, Texas, that's where most of the immigrants are coming in at. Okay, I get that. I understand that. And I understand that could be a burden. Okay. But would it be okay for them if those states were suddenly blue states? Would it be okay if those were democratic states? Would he be making that same statement? And just this, and it's like their speech betrays their heart. Their speech betrays who they really are. And it's just, to treat people as fodder, to treat people as pawns in your little game is not right. And it just goes to show how you don't value people because they don't look the same or don't sound the same. And like I said, had he not brought in the whole red state, blue state, you know, If he hadn't done that, I would have been fine. I understand that having these immigrants come in can be a burden. I get that. Okay. And that you want to get help from neighboring states. Okay. This wasn't even a neighboring state. Okay. You want to come with a solution to help these people who are coming into the country. Okay. And you're saying we need to share this burden as the United States. No, that's not what he said. He says he's selling more division. It's us and them, and we shouldn't have to do what they not going to do. And nobody says that we not going to do it. You know, that kind of just like angered me. That angered me when he was speaking like that. That truly bothered me, because again, that just shows that he has no value for these immigrants. He sees them as less than. He doesn't even see them as people, but more so as pawns. And the Texas governor, the same. And that's not that. That's again, that's against what I thought this country was about. Okay, that's what I thought. That's. I was trying to think of what does it say in the statute? Bring us your poor. You know, at one time we were welcoming it. We were welcoming people, and I understand there we can't have anybody and everybody come here. And I understand there's a process, and I agree that there should be a process, but don't treat people like they're objects to be used in your little game. All right. So that's what I had to say about the immigrants. Talked about voting, talked about Ukraine, talked about the hurricanes. If you have any thoughts, again, I would love to hear about it. I would love to see your comments as well about anything I may have said as well. The last thing I'm going to talk about, and again, this is going to be a short one, um, a short broadcast, unless we start getting some comments, or if anyone would like to call in. You can always call in 410 513 9499. The last thing I want to talk about, and it's old news now, and I haven't really heard much about it, haven't really seen much of it talked about on Facebook, unless I'm just in the wrong circles. And that is Honk for Jesus, the movie that came out on Peacock a couple of weeks ago. And I did watch it probably like that Saturday. I think it came out on Friday, and I think I watched it that Saturday. I know it wasn't the first night it was out, but within the second or third day of it coming out. And I went into it thinking it was going to be, satire, maybe some playful ribbing about the church. I expected the church to be teased a little bit, but watching it, I found myself to be very uncomfortable. And although there was moments that I was able to smile at, for the most part, I found it to be very uncomfortable. And many have drawn the line between the movie and what happened with Eddie Long a couple of years ago, the type of things that happen within the church. Okay. And again, I thought I was just going to be able to laugh a little bit, and laugh at ourselves for a little bit. Now, I do understand that this came out about a week, maybe 2 weeks after Beyonce's album, and she has a song called Church Girl. And because of that, along with this movie, this Church Girl talks about, her growing up and being in church, but she still goes out, and she acts like a hoe in the clubs and all these other things, and she's a church girl, but she doesn't act very saved. Let's just put it that way. So when I saw Honk for Jesus, my first reaction was that the enemy has stepped up its attack on on making us look foolish, making the church look foolish. And to some degree, I still feel that way. I still feel that the enemy has crafted another way that makes the church look like it's um, hypocritical, which it is. It can be. Um, it's made us look like we're not genuine. Okay, and that it's a waste of time, and that the church isn't real, and there's no need for it, and it's putting these things out to cause people to stay away. Okay, so that's how I felt. That's how I felt. But then I was listening to my good friend Dr. Mike Dorsey on his show, Headspace of Dr. Mike, and you can catch him Saturday mornings, 11 o'clock on Saturday mornings. And he was talking about it along with two of his co-hosts, and one of the co-hosts, and he was actually on here, talked before, and a young man, he says, you know, um, the church needs to wake up. And it wasn't me. He wasn't saying the church needs to wake up because of how we're being portrayed. It's because the church needs to wake up and actually face these issues, these problems that we have, you know? And he was absolutely right. And when he said it, I realized what was really upsetting to me was that we've given the enemy the ammunition to put this stuff out there. Nothing that the church girl song says is untrue. Okay. Is it true for every person or every girl that goes to church? Absolutely not. But does it happen? Yes. Everything that was being portrayed, all the negative stuff that was being portrayed in the movie um, Honk for Jesus, okay, it's true. It's happening. It's happening in the church. You know, in every church, no. Does it happen with every pastor, first lady? No. Does every child think that church is a big play? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But it is. It does happen. It does happen. One of the first things that really caught me, that really sunk my heart, was there was some kind of service or some kind of meeting. They were videoing, and there's a little girl. I wouldn't say little girl, but a young girl. I would say maybe 12 years old, maybe as old as 14. I don't know how old she's supposed to be. But she started, speaking in tongues, and she fell out and all this other things. And then, like, they was doing like a documentary type thing when they was talking to her. She was like, I just love the theater. And I think that when she said that, I said, what did she say? And Felicia said, I don't know. And then I went back and played it again. I just hit rewind real quick, and that's what she said. It's like, I just love the theater. And that just hit me. And from that point on, I started really paying attention to what was being done, you know, in this movie, what was being said. Because in all honesty, too many of us are playing church. Too many of us are not serious about our relationship and what church is really supposed to be about. The church is supposed to be the center of the community where people come to get help. It's supposed to be that place of community where you can have conversations with one another. It's supposed to be, yes, that place where you come and you come to worship together. But it's supposed to be a community where we are there to help one another, to edify one another, to lift up one another, to learn from one another. And yes, even admonish one another when need be. That's what the church is supposed to be. But too many of us are playing church. Too many of us just want to come on Sunday and get a word that's going to make you feel good, that's going to make you shout, say hallelujah, you know, but then go back to being in the club again, just being in the club again, because you know that you're going to be able to come back once more on Sunday and play church all over again as if God is really accepting that. Hey, Patricia, thank you for joining. I appreciate you. You know, and that's a real issue. People are just playing church. People are just playing church, and they only want to hear the messages. From my perspective, they only want to hear the messages that make them feel good, or talk about they're going to have some kind of prosperity, or they're going to receive some great gifts, or and things like that. They're not interested in hearing real teaching. They don't want to hear the sermons about sin and why you ought not do sin. Okay. Now, some of that is because the pastors don't want to do it. One of the things that I got when I heard from or when I heard Church Girl, it was another pastor, and I forget his name, but I did repost it on my page, and he was saying, how come pastors, preachers aren't saying much about Church Girl, and it's because pastors themselves have Beyonce on their playlist. And how are you going to preach against something that you're indulging yourself, that you are contributing to yourself? How are you going to preach against that when you're living it yourself? So, I mean, if people are playing church, it's because those of us who are in leadership, those pastors who lead, especially those in mega churches and things like that, aren't given a clear message. And I wonder sometimes how many of us, because of social media, are being misled by false prophets of the day who are giving opinion instead of what thus says the Lord, who are relying too much on seminary and how they should be hooping, and they're thinking about the business side, but they're not actually in a real relationship with a true living God and listening to and for his voice to say, this is what I need you to say to the people. And again, I'm not saying this is the case for all pastors out there. There are many great pastors out there. But I also know that there's sometimes, I think sometimes we give pastors or church leaders too much power. And what do they say? Power corrupts. Absolutely. And if all you get is power and you don't get any 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 accountability, or you're not being held accountable to anyone other than yourself, okay, and you're not even really holding yourself accountable to God because you think that God has sent you and that's as far as it's gone, and you're not consistently hearing from God and getting your message from God, that's gonna give us what we have. That's going to give us what we have. And we already know that there's going to be false teachers. The word told us there's going to be false teachers. So we know that there are those out there who know that's who they are. That's who they want to be. That's their mission. They understand it. But then there are those that will also leave or lose their way during the time. So what I was saying was, again, it's just that now that I've had more thought about it, and I haven't gone back and watched it. Don't know if I will watch it again. Probably won't watch it again. I don't have any interest. But it just made me realize what I was really upset. Not so much that the enemy is showing us up, okay, but that we've given him the fuel. We've given him the fuel to show us up because we are playing church, okay, and we do have those in leadership that should not be in leadership. And I'm not saying that Every pastor got to be perfect. Every pastor can't have a past. I'm not saying pastors can't struggle. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you know they can't have fault, because they can. Okay, and we have to be able to love them back to where they need to be. We need to be able to do that, but at the same time, I don't think we hold some of our leaders, and I'm thinking about those mega church leaders. I'm thinking about those who are out there in the front. I don't think we hold them accountable, and that kind of came up in this movie. How you will just have, no matter what they do, no matter what the pastor does, you're still going to have those that are going to follow him no matter what. Okay, and then they're going to name it, or they're going to claim it as being, well, we have to forgive, and nobody's perfect. Yes, we do have to forgive, but I think the big issue is that word accountability. We don't hold people accountable. Used to hear all the time, some people need to sit down or be sat down. Okay. And just because you're sat down for a time does not mean that you can't get back out of that chair. But sometimes people need to be sat down and dealt with, okay, until they get it right, until they're able to see what they've done, until they've repented about what they've done. And if there's no repentance, then they don't need to go back up and be in that spot of leadership. And I think too many times we'll say, oh, well, they'll sit down for 6 months, they'll sit down for a year. But during that time, what's taking place? Have they repented and truly apologized for whatever they've done? And have they made some kind of restitution to whatever victims that may have come out of it? When you look at the Old Testament, the Bible outlines exactly what needs to happen. If you do this, then you had to repay this. If you do that, you got to do this. You owe this. And I'm sorry, just saying I'm sorry and having tears is not enough. It's not enough. So those are my random thoughts. It was kind of quick and short. Thank you, Mom, for joining tonight. Thank you, Patricia, for joining tonight. Looks like it was just us tonight. Hopefully there'll be some others that'll come on. I do have one guest I know has been confirmed. I'm working on 2 others as well. But I do appreciate you all coming, and do continue to share and have your own conversations. Think about what was being said. Again, agree, don't agree, that's fine. It's about having a conversation. But I do appreciate you all coming on and checking in. And if you come on a little late, or coming on a little late, again, leave some comments. If you have ideas or questions or some thoughts about anything that you would like to talk about or see on Keep It Real Conversations, if there's any people that you would like to talk to or have as a guest that you think would be great guests, would love to hear that as well. Any suggestions whatsoever. But I do want you all to know that I do love you, and I appreciate all that you do. If you're just checking in and you've never seen Keep It Real Conversations, please know that in the end, I would hope that some of the conversations are entertaining and that they're informative and that you get something out of it. But in the end, the most important conversation that you will ever have is the one about your salvation and about what Christ did for you on the cross. And if you don't know what that is, let's talk about that. That's a really important conversation. All right. So I'm just going to sign off. I appreciate you all for coming. Do enjoy the rest of your week. I look forward to seeing you next week as well. And continue to be blessed. All right. I'll talk to you again real soon.